I'm curious if you can relate to this. When I tend to travel, I tend to go to places that I know a lot about, that I've heard of before, that are very popular, so that it is a controlled, predictable experience. Seldom do I go to places that might challenge me, that might maybe even scare me a little bit, or might push me in some way. But every once in a blue moon, I get pushed. And I say pushed because they're not places that I typically would choose for myself, but they happen to me. For instance, I was on a cruise and it happened to be one of the ports that I otherwise wouldn't have chosen for myself. Or through work, I had to go to a certain location because it was work and I didn't have any other choice. So on those occasions when I'm pushed a little bit into places I don't normally choose for myself, I found that those are the places that make the deepest impact on me. They change my life in special ways I never predicted and make an imprint in my mind. They're memorable, whereas a lot of the predictable places, they kind of fade away over time. So today I want to share with you the story of how Dominica forever changed my perspective on travel. So if you've seen my recent videos, you know I just got back from a brand new Enchanted Princess cruise to the Caribbean. And in it we went to the big name islands such as St. Thomas and Aruba and Curacao, but mixed in between that we went to the small rainforest island nation of Dominica. Now I knew nothing about Dominica and it just seemed like it was going to be the stop between the places that I really wanted to see. So when I got up that morning when we arrived in Dominica, I didn't really have any expectations. I just kind of wanted to get through the day. Getting off the ship, it kind of reinforced it. It's a gorgeous island, but when we walked into the port, it was cordoned off by a bunch of shipping containers because of COVID restrictions. They didn't allow you off the ship unless you were on an excursion through the ship. You weren't allowed to just get off and go wander around. We went up and we met our excursion director, and then about 10 of us got together and we loaded into a kind of a narrow van. We were kind of sitting in there waiting until everybody else arrived so that we could take off on this full day long excursion. The roads in Dominica are very narrow, mostly just 2 lanes, oftentimes just one, where only one car can fit. And as we were driving up to our first destination, which was near at the top of one of the mountains, it is a lot of switchbacks and curves and winding, and our driver would drive super fast and then hit the brake and go around. And it was definitely an interesting car ride. The people behind us kept going the whole time and complaining. The people in front of us would make comments about the driving, to the point that the driver actually had to say, look, I know what I'm doing. You just need to relax and sit back. I will get you to where you need to go. So on this journey, it was about 30 to 45 minutes of switchbacks and the from the back and the complaining from the front. Let's just say my outlook on the island wasn't much better, and I didn't have a lot of high hopes of what might be happening that day. So we got up to the first destination and got out into the parking lot, which was in a rainforest, which is a gorgeous rainforest, but it was just had a little sales kiosk where they were selling some different things, and then a little welcome center that had some exhibits. And then you look off in the distance and there's this winding path deep into the forest. We started off on this path and I started to hear the birds chirping, and there's that deep tropical bird sound that kind of echoes through the forest. And then you smelled some of those tropical flowers and it cools off, and we start winding down this path. And I start thinking, oh, this might be something kind of cool. And I start lightening up a little bit and not being so negative on what it is that I was going to experience. So we wind through the forest and we finally come upon the destination, and it unveils this gorgeous waterfall and what's called the Emerald Pool. And as you can see, it is just absolutely just breathtaking. And so a few of us went ahead and got into the water and played in the waterfall, and a couple people even climbed up on the waterfall. Loads of picture opportunities, loads of beauty everywhere you were. The water was cool, so it was nice and refreshing. It was fun. It was lighthearted, and it helped change that mood of the grumpy passengers into, oh, this is kind of cool. After we were done, we went back up to the parking lot, loaded into the vans, and then drove all the way down those winding roads back to the sea for our next stop. On the way down, there was the and from the back seat, and there was the from the front seat. A couple of the passengers started to get car sick because of the winding. So then we're back into that negative space, and okay, well, what are we doing next? We keep driving down to the sea, and on the way we drive through Roseau, which is their main city, their capital city in Dominica. And Roseau is so different from the cities I'm used to. You have to remember, they are an island nation that was fought over by the British and the French, and there were slaves that escaped and learned how to live in the rainforest, and then were able to make a life for themselves and develop this island nation. They also are a rainforest that is in the path of literally every hurricane that comes through the Caribbean, so they've learned to construct their houses to withstand the pressures of the hurricanes and to thrive and to make a good life for themselves. Driving through it, it was very different, and it was very easy to try to think that where I live is better. I am ashamed that I thought those things, but I admit that that's some of the thoughts that were going through my mind. So we finally get to our location for our next stop, and this is snorkeling in the Champagne Reefs. And so we get there, we get all of our gear, equipment, we get, put everything on, get our suits on, and we start wading into the water. And I noticed as I was wading into the water, I looked up and I could see the beautiful rainforest right against the edge of the crystal turquoise clear waters. And it was so beautiful and so amazing. And then our guides got in the water with us, and I have to give props to the guides because they had to wrangle in what must have been about 30 people, 30 mostly Americans, mostly what you would think of as typical American tourists. Our guides were excellent because they were able to corral us all, help us to have a great experience, and make sure none of us drowned, which could have been a very real possibility. But anyway, we swam through this clear water and came upon the Champagne Reefs. It is thermal activity under the water, and so the bubbles come up through the water, and when you look at it in just the right way, it looks like crystals in the water. And then there's abundance of life. There was one area that looked like it was almost an underwater forest. It was green, like it had moss on it underwater. It was really cool and really interesting. Our guides did an excellent job of pointing things out and helping it to be really interactive, and like I said, corralling us. And it was just a really neat thing. And once again, spirits were lifted and we had a great time. And so we loaded back in the van and we drive up to a little B&B for lunch. It is actually a very beautiful B&B and has a beautiful view over the city and of the ocean. We settle in for a homemade meal and it was absolutely delicious. It was amazing. I tried everything there. I loved everything there. And then we spent some time touring through the B&B and just kind of relaxed and had a beautiful view for our lunch. Then after lunch, we're starting to get a little tired because this is an 8-hour tour. And so by now we're on, it must have been hour 4 maybe. And we're told we're going to go to the highest peak on the island. And so we started driving up again, windy roads, 1-lane roads. We were driving and all of a sudden we just pull over to the side of the road because there's this amazing, amazing view. And once again, you're reminded of how absolutely gorgeous this island is. The tour guide is offering history about the island and telling us more. And as we're learning these stories, you look up and you see their streetlights have little wind turbines at the top. And then you look and you see how there's a pipe leading down from the waterfalls down, and you hear about the hydroelectric power that they use. They are so resourceful in using the rainforest and what they've been given as far as their natural resources and what they have available to create this thriving, amazing society. And it just helps you to see the beauty in that and juxtapose that against what you think is not ideal living conditions and start to realize that is not the case at all. That is not at all the case. This is just how they've adapted. It's different from what I'm used to, but by no means is it less than or worse than. And so I'm starting to get these inklings, but I still have the in the back and the complaining in the front. So you go back to that same place where you think you're better. So we finally get up to the highest point, which is Trafalgar Falls. And it's very similar to when we went to the first stop, selling some souvenirs on the side. There's a welcome center, a little exhibition of the area. And so we get out, and again, there's a winding trail through the forest, but this time it's uphill. So after you wind through and you get to the very, very top, you see the most amazing waterfalls that I've seen in my life. They call these the Mama Waterfall, Papa Waterfall, and the Baby Waterfall. The Papa is 75 feet, Mama's 25 feet, and then what comes together in the middle is the Baby Waterfall. And it is just jaw-droppingly gorgeous. And so we're all taking photos and looking around and just taking in the beauty of the area. And by this time, we're 6 hours into the trip, give or take, and then it's time to get back into the vans. And by this time, even I was like, you know what, it's been a long day. I'd really love to just get back to the ship and just rest. I'm just getting tired, and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful, but I'm kind of done. And that seemed to be the mood of most of the passengers. So we pile back into the van, and yes, once again, we are driving to the next destination, which thankfully is only about 10 minutes away, but still there's the in the back. and the complaining in the front and the car sick person. And so we're right back into that same place again. We wind up to the next destination. We cross this narrow, literally can barely fit a car bridge and park. And then we get out, and it's a rainforest, so it's still pretty and it's still gorgeous, but you see this dark hole and water coming out. And that's really all you see. You don't see anything beyond that. So you're looking at it and they say, okay, get out, put on these life jackets and jump in this cold water. And we're like, why? What are we doing? And honestly, I thought about not doing it. I was like, I'm just tired. I just want to go home. But finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm here to experience, so let's just do it. So we put it on and we jump in this cold water and we're just standing there going, okay, what the hell is happening right now? I'm like, okay, follow us. It's gonna be some swimming. And so we start swimming through this dark, almost like looking like a cave kind of a thing, and you swim through the hole. And it was the most amazing, magical thing I can ever imagine. When you get in, it's this black rock that is pretty high, but you could still see the sky and you could see the rainforest above you, and the water is deep and dark and cool, and you wind through these canyons, and it's so amazing. And if I was by myself, I'd probably be terrified, but because we're in a group, it actually was a really cool experience and you weren't afraid. And you wind back in and you go to this little area where they show you Pirates of the Caribbean was actually taped here, and they show where the cameras were mounted to the wall, and they show where Orlando Bloom jumped into the water to hide from the Indians, and it's just incredible. And you're looking around and taking pictures, and it's just the coolest thing. And then they say, come on, we have more to go. And so you keep swimming, and all of a sudden you come upon this amazing waterfall that actually carved this water into these rocks. And so we got to climb up and play in the waterfall and then get back in the water. We wind back through and we get back out, and everybody is just on top of the world. Everybody is so excited because this experience was so cool. So we get back in the van, they pull a little ways ahead and they're like, rum punch time. And they had homemade rum punch that they shared around with everybody, and everybody was just cheersing and talking about Wacky Rollers, who is the excursion company that sponsored this, and I highly recommend them. They are amazing. It was just really festive and such an amazing time. And then after we had our rum punch, we got back into the vans and we drove back through Roseau. And when we were driving back through Roseau, somebody said, well, how much are houses here? She was saying, well, everybody wants to live in the city, so it's more expensive in the city, which is right on the edge of the water, which is understandable. And then if you live farther away, it's a little less expensive. So if you want to live down into the city, it's about maybe 300,000 US for housing, and about maybe 250 or so US for, you know, if you're outside of the city. There was the first like light in my head that what I was seeing and I equated to poor is not at all. And it helped me realize what an arrogant ass I had been, thinking that I'm in my protected little American world and I know better. And that was not the case at all. And so when we drove back through Roseau, it helped me to realize this is not at all what I thought it was. These people are not at all what I thought they were. Why do you make these judgments about things just because of your worldview is different? Why do you make these judgments about everybody else's worldview? It was the first light bulb that said, well, you're being an idiot. And so we're driving back down and we pass a mural of their flag, their national flag. And they start telling us about their national flag, and they're telling us about their history and what they've overcome. And it just helped me to realize, by stretching into seeing places I otherwise wouldn't have chosen for myself, I was able to see another side of life, another worldview, another perspective on how people live and how people work and how people thrive. It resonated with me. It stuck with me. This one has affected my worldview, so that when I travel again, I don't think I'm going to always choose the predictable path. I want to learn new things and challenge my worldview so that I can forever be changed. And I think that's what the power of travel is. Be willing to be changed by what you see. Because if you only go to the predictable places and stay at resorts where it's a controlled, measured experience, you might have some experiences like this, but for the most part, you're probably gonna just be around other people that are similar to you, having similar experiences. I challenge you, next time you go traveling, even if you still pick those places, add one new place in. Add something in that's a little unpredictable. Add a local experience. So even if you go to a measured, controlled place, maybe do a local experience that's just a little bit scary, a little bit challenging, pushes you out of your comfort zone just a tiny bit, because you never know what you're going to experience that's going to completely change your worldview and make an impact in your life. So if you are traveling this year and you want some help with that on how to plan like the professionals do and maybe have your own experience and adventure in Dominica, take a look at this video here. And otherwise, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and listening to my story today. And I hope to see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.